Oh, what just happened? So many pieces of news that happened that nobody in Denver Broncos country saw coming. We got to break it all down, starting off the bat with the big news that Deebo Samuel late last night was traded for a 5th-round draft pick to the Washington Commanders. So Denver Broncos will face Debo Samuel and Jaden Daniels next year. So that's going to be an interesting element of that to watch. But we've got to break this entire deal down, starting with the fact that a lot of folks thought the Denver Broncos might be a potential landing spot for Deebo Samuel. You had heard several folks in Debo's circle say that he had narrowed it down to the Houston Texans and the Denver Broncos. So you had Broncos country kind of divided. Like, do we want Debo? Is Marvin Mims himself like a younger, less diva-ish version of a Deebo Samuel? What is the trade compensation going to be like? I think if a lot of us had heard that it was only going to be a 5th-round draft pick to give a flyer on Debo, we would have been like, sign us up. But then we heard more about what really all went into this deal. Well, not only is it the 5th-round draft pick, the Washington Commanders are picking up almost $18 million of his salary. So when the Broncos have $50 million of cap space right now, I don't want that going to a receiver who was one of the worst receivers in all of football last year when it came to creating separation. You're hearing a ton of people now in San Francisco kind of sigh a big sigh of relief now that he's gone and say, hey, we've got to get younger. We heard John Lynch in his combine press conference talk about the fact that the 49ers were one of the oldest teams in football and they have to get younger if they want to actually make a contention. Like we see what Green Bay is doing there in the NFC. It's all about young, hungry, and the San Francisco 49ers were like old and complacent, and Deebo Samuel was a huge part of that. He was a diva. I think a 5th-round draft pick is pretty low for him. You heard a lot of people in San Francisco and on San Francisco Twitter saying, oh, if the Broncos get him, maybe we could just do Pat Surtain, Deebo Samuel swap. And I'm like, yeah, that's throw in a couple firsts, and we're still probably saying no. A 5th-round draft pick is pretty low to get for Deebo, knowing we got more for Jerry Jeudy, and I think Deebo Samuel's ceiling is higher than Jerry Jeudy's, but he's also older and a me-first guy and a diva, but really interesting to see him go for a 5th. Let me know, are you relieved that we are not paying $18 million for Deebo, or would you be like, hey, I'll give a 5th-round flyer for that, and we are going to trust our capologists to make it all work? Let me know in the comments what you think. Knowing that San Francisco 49ers are needing to shed massive amounts of salary space in order to pay for a Brock Purdy extension and a a new deal for him. There's a lot of people saying that Dre Greenlaw, their amazing inside linebacker before his Achilles injury in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, would be hitting the free agency market. So that's a 49er who, if we could make a run at him, would absolutely love it. Now knowing that we're going to have Zach Bond, we're going to have him, we're going to have Bolton. There's so many inside linebackers who are going to hit free agency that I think the Broncos could easily come out of free agency with one of these guys, and that just adding more into that, obviously supply and demand impacts cost, and so the bigger the supply, the less the Broncos have to pay, so that would be very, very exciting. Other piece of news that hit that was surprising is the fact that the New York Jets are going to be moving on from Devonte Adams. This isn't just some like YouTube person in their basement like me just making a prediction. This is now Ian Rappaport, who came out and said that they're looking for a trade partner for him, and if they don't find one, they'll be cutting him. I would never, ever, ever think about paying anywhere close to his cap number, but if he does become available as a free agent and you could pay him a vet minimum, the Jets would be on the hook for his full, like they are guaranteeing this cap number, but kind of like the Steelers are doing with the Russell Wilson deal. How would you feel about Devonte on a vet minimum, knowing that the Jets are paying him? He's got something to prove, but Ian Rappaport is predicting that he may end up wherever Aaron Rodgers ends up. You're hearing rumors that Aaron Rodgers might go to the Raiders. Is there any way Devonte Adams goes back to the Raiders? Could be very interesting to watch, but all that kind of stuff. I mean, those are 3 big things that I definitely did not predict coming into this weekend. We thought this weekend was all about the NFL Combine, and yet you hear three big moves here with the Greenlaw, with Debo, and with Devonte. Like that's kind of wild stuff. Now, want to transition real quick here to just some different things and observations after the NFL Combine. I think it's important to not only just note how the players did there, but you got to consider other factors too. Sean Payton was on the sideline of today's practice and was interviewed about like, hey, is the NFL Combine when you fell in love with Bo Nix originally? And he said, you know what? Actually, Bo Nix didn't throw very well at this event. A lot of college quarterbacks, like the balls aren't broken in. It's air conditioned in Lucas Oil. They're not ready for it. He didn't throw very well here. So it wasn't until his pro day that we knew. So we're falling in love or falling out of love with like a lot of guys at the NFL Combine. It's important to note that it's like an entire resume portfolio of work. It's their college tape. It's their workouts at the Combine. It's their pro day. It's their interviews. It's their medicals. It's all that kind of stuff. But all we have to go on is what we saw this weekend. And so there's a couple things I noticed and really thought. And the first thing I noticed was this running back class is stacked and this tight end class is stacked. And there are running backs and tight ends in the second and third round who I'd be over the moon excited to end up getting. And the difference between the number 1 running back and the number 4 running back isn't as big as maybe we thought coming into this, at least with their combine numbers. But the difference between the number 1 safety and the number 5 safety is massive. And the difference between the number 1 center and the number 5 center is massive as well. And so positional value wise, might the Denver Broncos be best off selecting the best defensive player on the board when they're there at 20, and then picking up running back and tight end and picking up a couple of them in the draft and having a couple at-bats there to figure out one of those guys. And so I was impressed with what I saw out of Malachi Starks out of Georgia at the Combine. He's the one who's getting tons of comps to a Derwin James. So as NFL free agency is opening here in 6 days, it's going to be interesting to see what holes the Broncos have on their roster, because I think that will tip us off a lot more to what we are doing in the NFL draft. If the Broncos go out and they get Tufanga out of San Francisco, then we're not going to get a safety there in the draft. So that'll be interesting to watch. I was impressed with the center as well out of Georgia. You really very rarely go wrong if you draft a Georgia boy. That's just, we know that going back to Noshawn Moreno there. But seeing the relative athletics score that of all the centers ever tested in this, that you're talking Jared Wilson out of Georgia as a center, one of the best to ever physically test at this, and had a playoff team there with a backup quarterback at the end there. Just a fantastic center. If all of a sudden you upgrade the only position on this offensive line that you have a question mark on, you're talking about having a rookie quarterback on his rookie deal and the best offensive line in football. Like, we arguably already have the best offensive line in football, so you were taking your only weakness, massively upgrading it. So let me know what you would think about the Broncos kind of zagging from what we were picturing. We were picturing a tight end or a running back early. What if instead we got a center or the best defensive player available? Let me know in the comments what you think about that. Next thing is that there was some real depth at wide receivers who I'd never really heard of or given a ton of thought to, who I think fit what Sean Payton builds when he drafts quarterbacks. And so the first one is a Thornton. And, I went to Thornton High School, so I'm already kind of inclined to just love Thornton. I lived in Loveland for a while too, so I like Colston Loveland. Thornton or Loveland, one of those guys would be pretty sick there. But Dante Thornton, 6'5", and ran a 4.3 40. We know Sean Payton wants his wide receiver room getting off the bus and it looking like a basketball team. He's made that joke several times. And I think if Thornton could definitely fit the part. So running 4.3 40 at this kind of size is absolutely crazy. He led the entire college football this year in yards after the catch because you are 6'5" and run a 4.3 40. He's a speed demon. He has that ability to go up and get the ball. His gauntlet test, he didn't drop a pass or look like he was even close to dropping a pass here. And I think, a volunteer, we had Peyton Manning was a volunteer. That could be exciting. And you just see his ability to, with that 6'5" frame, to go up and get it, and that kind of speed that way, way faster than a Cortland Sutton or anything like that. And the big thing with Cortland, he's got that big frame, but it feels like he's always catching the ball going to the ground, where Dante Thornton catches the ball and then runs with it and led college football in yards after the catch. Huge frame and the speed that is very rare to see at that. To run one of the fastest 40s at that height is crazy. Other name that I remember seeing only in the CU Nebraska game, and that is a former Husky, Nebraska Husky. I mean Husker, whatever they are. Okay, I can't stand them. But that's Isaiah Nayor. And again, his RAS score off the charts, that of all 3,400 wide receivers who they've ever done these analytic tests on, he's 11. So that's just the percentage of that's absolutely crazy. And 9.97 relative athletic score. And he kind of has the film to prove it. It's hard to even watch highlights of Nebraska because remember they have the quarterback who's like tries to pretend he's Patrick Mahomes. But you just see, like, he kind of reminds me of Marvin Harrison Jr. Maybe it's just wearing that 18, but the fact that he's like the 11th best wide receiver ever tested when it comes to all those metrics, like that could be crazy. And again, you're talking about a late round here. And that's what's just so exciting about right now for the Denver Broncos is like Sean Payton is absorbing all of this. He's taking in all the details. He is going to find the weapon to fit with Bo Nix. Free agency is just a couple days away, and there are so many options to take the minor weaknesses we have on this team and massively upgrade. So Broncos Country, we've got a ton to believe in.